The morning was still dark when Elias Vore dragged the first bale from the wagon and set it against the cabin wall. He did not light a lamp. He worked by the gray that comes before sunrise on the Nebraska plains, the kind of gray that has no warmth in it, only the suggestion that darkness will eventually end. The rope in his hands was stiff with cold. He soaked it in the water barrel by the door, let it go soft, and began to bind. He had been at it 4 days. Ruth coughed inside. He heard it through the log wall. One dry bark, then quiet, then another. She was 7 years old, and the sound she made at night had stopped resembling the cough of a child and started resembling something older, something that did not belong in a child's chest. He kept working. The year was 1883, and Harwick Flats, Nebraska, had already buried 6 homesteaders that winter, 2 from cold, 4 from what cold brings after it. Elias knew the names. He had stood at 4 of the graves. His own cabin was raw timber. No clay between the logs, no hides on the interior walls. Clara had meant to finish the chinking that autumn. Then autumn did not go the way either of them had planned. He found the journal 3 mornings ago, under her side of the mattress, when he pulled the rope frame to replace a broken slat. Brown leather, water-stained at the corner. Her grandmother's name on the inside cover in faded ink. Below it, in Clara's own hand, a series of notes he did not recognize at first measurements, a sequence of steps, a drawing of a wall cross-section, with bales, stacked floor to ceiling, and rope run in a specific pattern. Norwegian settlers. 1,847. Her grandmother's method for keeping a plains cabin alive through winter. He read it once. Then he went to Gideon's and bought every straw bale the man had. 3 days later, Harlan Cress rode past the property line and slowed his horse. He did not stop. He looked at the cabin wall, half covered now in bales, bound with frozen rope, and he looked at Elias, and then he rode on without a word. Elias ran his hand along the gap between 2 logs near the doorframe. Wind passed through his fingers. Ruth coughed again. He closed the journal. His thumb moved across the back pages. He did not open them. He set it on the table and walked back outside. Before we begin, tell me in the comments, have you ever worked on something in silence, while everyone around you waited for you to fail? Subscribe if you believe that the quietest workers are sometimes the ones building what lasts. The rope was already beginning to freeze. By the 3rd morning of loading, Elias had developed a system. He stacked the bales in a specific order, bottom course first, each bale pressed tight to the one beside it, no gap wider than a finger. Then the rope, soaked and run horizontal across the face of the stack, pulled taut and tied at the corner posts. By the time the sun reached midpoint, the rope had gone rigid. By evening, it was iron. The bales did not shift. The wall they made was nearly 2 feet thick. He did not explain this to anyone. Ruth watched from the window in the mornings, her breath fogging the glass. Once she came to the door and asked where he had learned it. He did not answer. He handed her back inside by the shoulder and told her to keep the stove fed. It was a Tuesday when he drove the wagon to Gideon's feed store for the last load. Harlan Cress was on horseback in the road, talking to a man Elias did not recognize. Clean coat, leather satchel across the saddle. Cress saw the wagon coming and said something to the man that made him turn and look. Then Cress straightened in the saddle and called out. "Vore's building a barn around his house," he said. Loud. Loud enough for the 2 men on Gideon's porch to hear it, and the boy sweeping beside the door, and the woman coming out of the dry goods across the road. Or maybe he plans to sleep with the animals. 3 men laughed. Elias pulled the wagon to the post and climbed down. He began loading bales, one after another, the same way he had done every morning. He did not look at Cress. He did not look at the men on the porch. The woman across the road watched for a moment, then turned away. Maren Solberg, 1 Homestead North. She had known Clara. She did not speak. She looked at Elias across the road for a long moment, something level and still in her face. And then she walked away without looking back. Elias loaded the last bale and drove home. That evening, a rider came up the road and left a folded notice at the door without dismounting. Elias read it at the table by lamplight. The Harwick County Land Office. His property, all 160 acres, had been recorded as unclaimed in the county ledger, a filing error, 2 years prior. A buyer had registered interest. The deadline to contest the claim and produce original documentation was 48 hours from the date of notice. The date on the notice was yesterday. He read it again. Then he set it down. Under the floorboard near the east wall where Clara kept her papers, there was an envelope bundle he had not touched since the week after her burial. He knew it was there. He had told himself he would open it when he was ready. That had been 2 years ago. He was not ready then. He was not ready now. He looked at the straw bales outside the window, half visible in the dark. Ruth coughed from the back room. He had 1 day left to finish the wall. He had 1 day left to ride to the county office. He could not do both. He sat at the table until the lamp burned low. The county notice was flat on the wood in front of him. He read it a third time, looking for something he had missed, a provision, an extension, any language that gave him a day he did not have. There was none. The clerk's stamp at the bottom was dated, initialed, and final. He went to the neighbors before dawn. Aldous Pryor was first closest homestead to the south. A man Elias had helped pull a calf for 2 springs running. He knocked. Pryor came to the door in his coat and looked at Elias and listened. Then he said his wife was already nervous about the weather coming, and he did not want the girl's cough spreading to his own children. He closed the door without waiting for an answer. The Fenwick place was next. No one came to the door at all. Old Carver at the end of the Harwick Road opened up and heard Elias out, and then shook his head slowly, the way a man does when he has already decided but wants to appear as though he is still thinking. He said he didn't want to get mixed up in whatever Vore had gotten himself mixed into with the county. He said it plain. He said he didn't want his family involved in a fool's business. No greeting passed at any door. Elias rode back. He pulled up the floorboard near the east wall and lifted out the envelope bundle. 2 envelopes, both sealed. He opened the oldest one first. A county notice identical in form to the one on his table, dated 2 years prior. Then a second notice, dated 1 year after that. Both had been delivered. Both had been placed here by Clara in the week before she died, waiting for him. He had not been ready. He set them on the table beside the new notice and opened Clara's journal. He turned to the front pages, the Norwegian notes, the wall diagram, the measurements he had followed bale by bale for 4 days. He turned past them. His eyes moved down the later pages. He was looking for something, a receipt, a record, any proof that the land had been filed correctly before the error crept into the county ledger. He found nothing. He closed the journal. He did not open the back pages. Then Maren Solberg knocked. She stood in the doorway without coming in, her coat buttoned to the throat, snow on her shoulders that had not been there an hour ago. She looked at the journal on the table. Something moved across her face, brief, controlled, gone. She did not explain it. She said she would think on the girl. Then she turned and walked back into the dark. If you have ever needed just one person to say yes, and everyone said no, tell me in the comments below. Every story you share matters, and I read each one. Elias stepped outside after her. The sky to the northwest had gone the color of iron. Not the gray of morning, something deeper, something that had weight to it. The first wind came across the flat ground, and it did not gust. It pushed. Steady and mean, and carrying ice in it. He put his hand against the nearest straw bale. The rope was rigid. The wall did not move. The temperature dropped while he stood there. Then the snow came. Not soft. It came flat and hard, driven sideways off the plains. And it hit the straw bale wall and did not pass through. Inside, the stove held. Elias fed it twice through the night, once at midnight, once before first light, and both times he put his hand flat against the interior wall beside the stove, and felt what he had not felt in 2 winters inside that cabin, warmth that stayed. Not warmth that leaked out through the logs the moment the fire dropped. Warmth that sat in the room and did not move. Outside, the temperature had gone to -28. Ruth slept without shivering for the first time in 3 nights. He watched her for a moment in the lamplight, her face loose, her hands unclenched beneath the blanket, and then he went back to the table. The county notice was still there. A knock came near midnight, hard. Not a neighbor's knock urgent, no patience in it. He opened the door, and Maren Solberg stood in the blowing snow with her wagon behind her. The canvas cover lashed down tight. She did not wait to be invited. She stepped inside, and looked at Ruth, and looked at the stove, and looked at Elias. "I will take her," she said. She kept her coat on. Elias looked at her. "Why?" he said. She said, "Clara asked me to watch for when you needed it." No other explanation came. He did not ask for one. He wrapped Ruth in 2 blankets and lifted her without waking her, and carried her to the wagon. Ruth stirred once, and looked up at him with fever-dark eyes, and he told her she was going to Maren's, and she closed her eyes again. Maren drove north into the storm without looking back. Elias saddled the horse. The road to Harwick was 4 miles through open ground, and the wind came at him from the left the entire way, driving snow across the horse's face and his own. He kept his head down. The county road was a pale suggestion under new snow, visible only where the fence posts marked the edge. Ice had formed on the horse's mane in the 1st mile. By the 2nd mile, he could not feel his left hand through the glove. He rode through the morning. He did not know, while he rode, that 3 men had come to his door an hour after he left. Cress's 2 ranch hands and a townsman named Briggs, the same Briggs who had laughed outside Gideon's feed store 4 days prior. The fire in Cress's bunkhouse had gone out before midnight and would not relight. The smoke had stopped rising from Cress's chimney sometime after that. The 3 men had gone to 2 other homesteads first. Both were cold. Both turned them away. They pushed open Elias's door and stood in the entrance, and felt the air inside the cabin, and did not speak for a moment. The stove was barely fed. The fire in it was low, but the air in the room was warm. They walked the perimeter, the way men do when they are trying to understand something. One of them put his hand against the interior wall, the wall backed by 4 feet of frozen straw, and held it there. They sat down against the wall. One by one, hats came off. A mile south, the lamp in Cress's window went dark. Elias tied his horse at the county building post. A single candle burned in the clerk's window. He stepped inside and stomped the snow from his boots, and laid the county notice on the counter. The clerk looked at it. He looked at Elias. He said he needed the original receipt of filing, not the notice, not a copy. The original stamped receipt. Without it, the claim could not be confirmed before the deadline. Elias stood at the counter and said nothing. The clerk said he could give him until first light. Elias walked back out into the storm. He stood at the horse for a moment, one hand on the saddle, the snow coming sideways off the plains and hitting the side of the county building and falling. He had no receipt. He had not known a receipt existed. He had not opened Clara's papers. He had not opened the back pages of the journal. 2 years of not being ready had brought him to a county road in a blizzard with nothing in his coat pocket but a notice that proved only that he was about to lose everything Clara had left him. He rode back through the dark. The 3 men were still against the wall when he pushed the door open. Briggs looked up. The two ranch hands did not. No words passed. Elias moved to the stove and fed it and sat down at the table. Clara's journal was where he had left it. He opened it. Not to the front pages, he knew those. He turned past the Norwegian notes, past the wall diagram, past the measurements, past the later entries in Clara's hand that he had never read. He turned all the way to the back. A single folded paper was tucked into the inside back cover, flush with the spine, invisible unless a man opened the journal completely flat. Clara's handwriting on the outside. 2 words. For Elias. He unfolded it. The original land receipt, stamped by the Harwick County clerk, dated 3 weeks before Clara died. She had ridden to town herself, found the error in the ledger herself, filed the correction herself, and brought the stamped receipt home, and put it in the back of the journal, and said nothing. She had known he would not be ready to open it. She had known he would open it when he had no other choice. He sat at the table with the paper in his hands, and did not move for a long time. One of the ranch hands shifted against the wall. The stove ticked. Outside, the blizzard pushed against the straw bales, and the straw bales did not answer. He rode back before first light. The storm had begun to ease by the time he reached the county building, not gone, but quieter, the wind dropping from a push to a lean. The clerk was already at the counter with his lamp. Elias laid the receipt flat on the wood. The clerk read it, checked the stamp, checked the date, opened his ledger, and drew a line through the unclaimed notation beside the Vore property. He initialed it. He stamped it. He slid the receipt back across the counter. Vore property, he said. Confirmed. A rider delivered the county notification to Harlan Kress 2 hours later. Kress read it in his cold cabin, alone. No scene followed from it. He was gone from Harwick Flats before the snow melted in March. No one marked his leaving. Ruth's fever broke at Marin's place that morning. She ate half a bowl of oat porridge and asked when her father was coming. Marin told her soon. Ruth asked if the cabin was still warm. Marin said yes. The 3 men left before Elias returned. They did not leave a note. They left a full cord of split wood stacked against the south wall, out of the wind, under the cabin's roof overhang. Elias saw it when he rode in and stood looking at it for a moment. Then he went inside and built the fire up. Marin brought Ruth home that afternoon, the 2 of them walking through snow that had gone soft and heavy, the storm finished, the sky beginning to show pale blue at the edges. Elias opened the door. He looked at Marin. She looked at the journal on the table, open to the back page, the receipt folded beside it. He nodded once. She nodded once. No other words passed between them on the subject. None were needed. That evening Ruth fell asleep by the fire, her color back, her breathing even. 3 sets of boot prints led away from the cabin through the snow outside, already softening at the edges. Clara's journal sat open on the table, the receipt folded back inside the back cover, where it had waited 2 years for a man to be ready. Some men build for the season. Some men build for the people they love. The difference shows when the wind comes. If this story moved, you subscribe and ride with us into the next. Another story of someone who built what others said could not stand.